Hey guys, so I'm gonna start doing story times. Just talking about stuff that's happened in my life that's led to me being overweight. Stuff that's happened in my life that has been trauma. So I will tell you in advance some of these stories may include something that may trigger someone. So please, at least for this part, if you're triggered by family drama, isolation, stuff like that, you might wanna maybe not watch this one. There are further ones that may have violence talked about, and I will let you know for those as well. So I'm going to tell a little bit of my story here. My last time I tried a video, it was 20 minutes long, and I don't want to do 20-minute videos. I'd like my story times to be kind of short. So I'm just going to preface with a little bit of my timeline of my story, and then I'll start going into specifics. I was born to a 16-year-old mother and an 18-year-old father. Growing up, my father lived in Florida, my mother lived in Illinois. I've been told multiple stories about how I ended up living with my grandparents. I don't know what the truth is. I know it's somewhere in the middle. But I also know at this point, it's been so many years of people telling their own story that they believe it's true. And so I'm not going to say anyone's lying. I'm just going to say that the stories I've been told is how they remember it. At about the age of 13, I did have a nervous breakdown. I was put on medications. I was out of school for about 2 weeks. And then in high school, I had a really hard time getting my identity because I really don't have a lot of memories before the age of 13. I have a couple here and there that I know are memories, and I have some that I'm not sure if they're memories or if it's stuff that I was told. And there's a lot of, and I'm sure that as you go along, listen to my story times, you're going to understand why I have a really hard time feeling like I can be included. I have a really hard time with my self-esteem, and I have a really hard time feeling like I have a family. I can say one of the biggest things I see as an issue in my family is that people don't listen to me. They think they know what I'm going to say, or they think they heard what I say, but they're not listening to what I say. Take, for example, recently my dad and I had a fight. And I want to preface this by saying I do love my family, just our relationships are really broken. My daughter wanted to go over and see my grandparents because my grandmother has dementia. My daughter's pregnant, and if she's not consistently reminding my grandmother that she's pregnant, my grandmother doesn't know. And because we don't know how long my grandmother's going to be here for, my daughter wants to share this with her grandmother. I get it. People are doing stay away rules. My grandparents are elderly. They have health conditions. They're high risk. We get this. We're not stupid. And what happened recently was my daughter wanted to go over there, and her plan was to call ahead, make sure my grandfather sits 2 chairs out on the patio. So my grandparents have like their back door, they have a wood patio, and then they have a screen door, and I think they still have a screen door. And then they have wood patio, and then there's like a area down below the wood patio where there's like rocks and stuff where you could put chairs. So the plan was for my daughter and her boyfriend to go over there, sit in those chairs. My grandparents could stay in the house behind the screen, at least 8 to 10 feet apart, so that they could visit and see each other. And then my daughter was going to bring Clorox wipes and wipe off the chairs, and then leave. When I brought this up, I said, and I kept saying, why can't they sit outside and visit? Because you got people who work in the medical field going over there all the time. You have people who work in casinos going over there, bringing them food, and people who drive truck going over there while we're supposed to be social distancing. And I get accused of wanting to kill them. That was in no way an intention, and I was absolutely taking way more consideration than other people were at the time for their safety. Because we had discussed what was the best way to have distancing, what was the best way to connect, what was the best way to be able to see them without risking their health. And so before this even came up, when my daughter messaged my aunt's like, nobody's allowed over there. And then my daughter was hurt, and she was upset. And she tried to, and she said, well, we're not going to go inside. And my aunt told her, you're not allowed over there. And my daughter was really hurt. And I will tell you right now, something happened to my grandparents during this virus. My family will be gone because I will not ever accept the fact that my daughter had a plan to not have any contact with them but be able to see them. and nobody would listen to the plan. They made assumptions about expectations because that's how they work. If it's me or my daughter, we have certain expectations of what we're actually doing. No one actually listens to us. And that is super, super frustrating because it's always been that way. There's always been this expectation. And there was a time where I was really close with these people. Really, really close. Or so I thought. Maybe I never was. So as I said, I was born to a 16-year-old mother and an 18-year-old father. My dad joined the Navy to help pay bills and support us. I don't know when they split. I don't know when they got divorced. I've never seen anything on that. My mother's story is that they were divorced before I was taken. My father's story, I believe, is that they weren't, according to my grandmother. My mother's story is that she was at work. She went to get me from daycare, and I was gone. And the very next day was a court hearing, or the day after, and she didn't have the money or the time. She didn't have the money, or she would lose her job if she left to go up to be at the court hearing. Now, my issue with this is I believe my grandfather could have stood in for her, but I don't know what would have had to happen for that. So there's that. But he could have, I think, at least gone in and asked for them to, put it off until he get my mother up there for the hearing. And if they were divorced, then that would my mother would have had custody of me. But I've never seen a custody document saying my mother has custody of me. The story I was told my grandmother saying that my father had told her was that my mother had left him. He was getting ready to be deployed, and that he drove me up there after asking his supervisor if he could take the weekend or an extra day off the weekend to drive me up to Connecticut and come back. And that the supervisor told him that your family doesn't come in your duffel bag. And so he wasn't going to let him take leave to go up for an emergency leave. So he had decided to leave anyway that night, drove me up to Connecticut, and then one of his buddies called the house, said, hey, by the way, he called muster. Well, with the military and muster, you have so long to show up and say, hey, I'm here. And that his supervisor had done this specifically to get him in trouble, knowing he would have left to get me to safety. And then that the military police was looking for him, and according to my grandmother, my dad was on some beach and the military police arrested him and he was taken away. But if that was the case, wouldn't his van still have been at my grandparents' house? Like it wasn't. So I don't know what really happened, and I honestly just don't care. It was years ago. This is just the first of many times where I have different stories about what happened in my life, and I have no memories of it, so I obviously don't know the truth. Which is why trust is hard for me. Growing up, I really only saw my mom twice. One of those times was her trying to kidnap me, which she fully admits to. I happened to be sick that day and wasn't sent to school. But she was waiting at my bus stop. And this is something that both sides agree happened. And I'm not going to go too far into it because nothing happened. I didn't go to school. My mother didn't kidnap me. It was just a plan. It didn't happen. My dad came up to visit once between the time I was left there and the time that I was graduating high school. And I went down to visit Florida. I went to Florida to go to a wedding for a family friend and got to see my dad, and that's when I found out he was remarried. And I thought, awesome, I can live with my dad now. He's remarried. I'll have a home. I can be with my parents, because living with my grandparents was weird. I was made fun of at school. I was treated differently. It was just not a good situation for me. Except, and this is an actual memory, and luckily before she passed away, my ex-stepmother and I resolved on this. She pulled me aside because I asked if I'd call her mom, and she informed me that no, I couldn't call her mom, and that I was a part of his past and I wasn't ever going to live with them. And that hurt. That hurt everything, because I couldn't understand why my dad didn't want me. Because I didn't hear it as her, I heard it as him not wanting me. And she's since admitted that she was, they hadn't been married that long. She didn't really want to be a mother at that time. Like, there was a lot of stuff involved in it, and I have forgiven her for that. But it still doesn't change the feeling that it created and the issues it created in my life. Because I didn't hear it as just her not wanting me. I heard it as them not wanting me. And so, for the rest of my time, until this was resolved, I always felt like my dad didn't want anything to do with me because he didn't show that he did. I only ever had two things from him, a couple things from him. I don't know when and where they showed up, whether I had them when I moved or what it was, but I had a Japanese doll and I think a flamenco doll, maybe. I don't know. I had these collectible dolls that I adored, and I believe my grandma told me they were from my father. Um, and then I had, he had ordered like from Swiss Colony, like a little music box house that played music, and it had Andy's Cream de Menthe inside. And I had that up on my dresser, and along with the dolls. And that was the only stuff I ever got from my dad. Was the dolls and the one birthday present. And he never sent cards. I never got Christmas presents from either of my parents. Nope. Well, next one I'll talk about the other part. But as far as my dad's concerned, I never got anything from him. And so he never did anything to show he cared. And so I know having her tell me that they didn't want me, for me, reaffirmed for me that I wasn't wanted. And I don't know, but I believe this was a really big part of my issues in my life, because my mother didn't want me because she wasn't there for me. She wasn't calling except for every once in a while. Her father had stopped coming to see me because he got married to someone who had a daughter my age. So he stopped coming to see me. And I don't know if that was her or what that was, but he's passed away now, so I'm not going to speak ill of the dead. And then I have my dad who didn't want me because, and so I grew up feeling unwanted. And it's really hard to get self-esteem when nobody wants you. And again, I'm not saying anyone intended it to be that way. I'm just saying it's how it was. So, anyhow, that's my story. And I will touch base with y'all soon.